Picture this, it's Christmas Eve 2006, and you're 8 years old. Or at least I was. You're getting ready to send your Christmas list off to Santa Claus, and it is full of the latest and greatest in gaming products. However, in your childlike ignorance, you fail to see that what you have on your Christmas list is not just the hot new toys of tomorrow, but they are some of the most revolutionary and influential products to ever hit the gaming world. And you were too young to appreciate it. So, join me as we remember gaming's most competitive console war, some era-defining video games, and the birth of multiple legacies in the longest and most prolific console generation ever. Greetings, fellow gamers. Welcome to the DunnionRings channel, where we come down your chimney and stuff your stockings with all things video games. Old and new, overrated and underrated. Today, on the most Christmassy of days, of course, besides tomorrow, which is Christmas Day, I've decided to release a Christmas special, and it's extra special because today should be my birthday, the 24th of December, and what better way to celebrate than to talk about the greatest gaming Christmas 2006. Now, just a heads up, this video won't cover much things on PC gaming at the time. Console, at the time especially, and still now, is still the more accessible way for the layman to game, but there's a lot of cool things happening in the PC world. Maybe we'll discover it in a different video. Okie dokie, let's see, where do we begin? Honestly, what is there to say about the Xbox 360 that hasn't already been said? It was the first console with a wireless controller right out of the box. Xbox Live updates brought us like gamer score, and the party chat was absolutely unmatched. We all know this. Despite launching in 2005, it was still very much in demand in the Christmas of 06. Obviously, it's the longest and most prolific console generation of all time. We'll get to that. But full disclosure, I wasn't really an Xbox kid. I was a die-hard PlayStation man through and through. The very first game I ever played was Duke Nukem Time to Kill on my grandmother's PS1 in like 2002, maybe? I still remember that first level, saving the Bootylicious strip club from time-traveling aliens. I think that's where it all began, my love for video games and bootylicious women. I'm putting it in, I think it's funny. I actually got an Xbox much later, but by then, all my friends had already made their core Xbox Live party chat gaming memories. I would come into school every day and like they'd be laughing about things that I didn't experience. I was like, when did all this happen? It happened on Xbox Live. That's why I got an Xbox 360. And by that time, gamers weren't really gaming as much then. So I ended up just playing like Dark Souls on it and a bunch of single player games. This was much later. My profile picture was the icon of the fucking kid chewing bubblegum, blowing a bubble with the beanie on his head. That's how you knew I was cool. But the Xbox 360 actually had some pretty good games on its release. Quake 4, which I never played, but was amazing. Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. And Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, which if you've played it, you know it fucking bangs. There was also some great Xbox 360 exclusives, and for this video I want to highlight one in particular, a large-scale alien warfare game, which came out, you guessed it, in November 2006, right in time for Christmas. So obviously it's very relevant, but we'll touch on that in a moment. First, let's talk about Xbox's biggest rival. Now this is more like it. The PlayStation 3, it came out November 17th, 2006, and it did have a rocky start. In fairness, there were some supply issues, and it launched at a way higher price point than the other two consoles in this sort of console war. I'm broke. Plus, it had some very big shoes to fill. If you don't know, the PS2 was the best-selling console of all time. Everybody and their grandmother had a PS2. My grandmother actually didn't have a PS2. She had a PS1. And yes, it could be argued that the PS3 having backwards compatibility and being a Blu-ray player gave it the edge over the Xbox 360, but we'll talk more about that after we talk about the great games and the legacy of everything. Yes, there were some cool games around the launch of the PS3, like Tony Hawk's Project 8 and Call of Duty 3, which is an important Call of Duty to talk about because it was, you know, the last Call of Duty before Call of Duty became Call of Duty, but we'll talk about that in a moment. What I want to focus on, just like I did with the Xbox, is the PS3 exclusive that came with the launch of the PS3, and it was another large-scale alien warfare game, exclusive to the PS3, coming out in November just before Christmas. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Very competitive. And we'll get to all of that in the games section of this video, but there was a third console in this console war, and it was a bit of a special one. Of course, I'm talking about the... Now, full disclosure, I think that the Wii is actually probably the coolest console we're going to talk about today. Obviously, it didn't have the same sort of hardware and capabilities that the next-gen consoles of the PS3 and the Xbox 360 had. Nintendo did what Nintendo usually do, and instead of trying to compete with its competitors, they tried to just blow them out of the water by doing something original. And I think we can all understand that the Wii really was a huge step forward in gaming. But for the sake of this video, it was released on November 19th, 2006 in North America and in December in other parts of the world. And yeah, we all know, motion control, very revolutionary, yada yada yada. Now the first time I saw the Wii was not through an advertisement, it was not through unwrapping it on Christmas Day, it was actually on TV. Every Christmas in Ireland, our premier talk show, The Late Late Show, at the time in 2006, it was hosted by a gentleman named Pat Kenny, who I know virtually nothing about. But every Christmas, The Late Late Show would do something called The Late Late Toy Show, where they showed all the coolest, hottest toys that were coming out in 2006, and they had a bunch of musical guests and celebrity guests and stuff like that. And in 2006, Pat Kenny was playing one of the 5 Wiis that was in Europe at the time.
You have these 2 things in your hand. This is the controller and its partner here. And I can, yeah, that's it. I can beat the lard.
I am so glad that that exists and we can all appreciate it. Fun fact, this is the year before Jerry Seinfeld came on the Late Late Toy Show to promote the Bee Movie, and Pat Kenny, not knowing who the fuck he is because he's just an old Irish dude, calls him Jerry Seinfeld.
Welcome, Jerry Seinfeld!
There is so much that we could talk about with like Wii games, because especially after Christmas, like what it went on to do, I think there's so many incredible games to talk about, but in my heart for this video, there's only 2 games that I want to touch on. The first being very revolutionary and a huge entry in an already very famous series, but the second just being something that I think everybody on this planet that has any experience with video games has a relationship with, and I think that's very special. The first is Twilight Princess. I had no idea, I was like 8 when I got the Wii or whatever, and I had no idea how to play Twilight Princess, but I was still enveloped in the world of Zelda, and I just found it so interesting and so cool. I didn't know how to play it. I think my brother got pretty far in the game at the time. But looking back now, it's pretty cool that this came out as a Wii launch game. I didn't realize it was a release game for the Wii. The next game that was a release game for the Wii is, of course, Wii Sports. Everybody who has any relationship with the Wii or gaming in general more than likely has a relationship with this song, and if you don't, you're one of the weird ones. Something I want to highlight here is that this is the last time, in my opinion, that video games felt like toys. Before they became gaming, and before it became its own special thing, video games were toys. The Wii is the last breath of it. Family gathered round, dipping into a bit of gaming with the Wii, and I think that that's something that Nintendo wanted, and it's something that they're still trying to do with the Switch and stuff like that, and I just really appreciate Nintendo for that. Where would we be without Nintendo? I know that PS3 and Xbox were incredibly influential in their own rights, but they were competing with each other. The Wii was its own thing, and I have so many core memories of boxing my uncle on Christmas Day in Wii boxing, or watching my dad play Wii golf, or playing Wii tennis by myself. Nobody else in my house liked Wii tennis. Honestly, for all this talk about this amazing Christmas, I think I know I either got the Wii this year or the year after. I can't be fully sure, just full disclosure. 2006, I might have gotten the Nintendo DS. Oh my god, I haven't even thought about the DS. Okay. We'll touch on the DS later because it was its own thing. We're not going to talk about the PSP. Like, in 2006, I think, like, there was like that Metal Gear Solid game that like I didn't play. If you played it, I'm sorry, it's not going to be in this video. So we'll touch on the DS now in a second. Let's just talk about all of the era-defining. So let's talk about these 2 exclusives I mentioned earlier. Obviously, we have them both coming out within days of each other in November 2006, right before Christmas, right before the launch of the PS3. And they both involve large-scale alien warfare. They're both narrative-driven. And I can imagine you already know what the Xbox 360 exclusive I'm talking about is, so let's talk about that first. It is, of course, Gears of War.
Now, what Epic has done is created, quite simply, a masterpiece. And a game that will go down as an instant classic, and it's the killer app that the 360 has been waiting for.
If you don't know the Gears of War franchise, it's still going today. Although I'm not sure how many people are playing it still to this day. I think Gears 5 came out like a year ago or something. When I was a kid, Gears of War was amazing. It was a game I wasn't allowed to play, and I played it over at my cousin's house because he had a 360. Like I said, I didn't get a 360 on launch, and I have such fond memories of playing Horde mode on Gears 2 and 3. I think it's safe to say that Gears of War is the first truly great franchise that was spawned in this time period, but it's not the last. So what was the PS3's answer to Gears of War? Do you remember? I remember. It's Resistance: Fall of Man. Cool? No? Just me? I think it's cool. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I fucked with Resistance. Like, I thought it was really, really sick. Obviously, I had a PS3 on launch or close to launch and not at 360 until years later. So it's obvious that I would have more memories of Resistance Fall of Man than on Gears of War. But in the game, you were like an American soldier. For some reason, you're in England, and the Chimera were attacking. I remember the Chimera. I remember their design. I thought it was quite cool. And when you're an 8-year-old and you've just got the PS3 on Christmas and you boot up Resistance Fall of Man, the graphics are like nothing you've ever seen, which is ironic because I bet they look like doo-doo right now. And I'm grateful. You know what I mean? And it had co-op. It had story mode co-op that I played with my brother. That is sick. What, do games still do that? I don't know. I think it's safe to say Gears of War came out on top as far as franchises go. I know that there was like a sequel to Resistance and another sequel and a PSP game or a PS Vita game, which is a crazy console we should talk about at some point. But for what it was, Resistance Fall of Man was really cool. And I think it was one of the first like story-based games that I played the whole way through and like was sentient enough to understand. You know what I mean? Now let's move on to some other great games that were coming out at this time. Some of these games are not the beginning of their franchises, but they were incredible entries nonetheless. We talked about Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, and we briefly mentioned Tony Hawk's Project 8, but let's just focus on that for a second. Do you remember Tony Hawk's Project 8? Do you remember how fucking sick that was? Like that intro with the slow motion kickflip and like the fucking Kasabian song. Say that I want you. Welcome to Mama. I always thought that song was called Welcome to Molyneux. Am I right in saying that the narrative of that game was that you had to like collect all these legendary skaters to like build a skating team or something like that? And I just remember Rodney Mullen was like the coolest motherfucker. He actually kicked off my Skater Boy era, like this game, because like his intro video, he's like doing like finger flips and stuff, and I used to think that they were so fucking cool. Like way cooler than regular like skateboarding. Oh my god. I just fucking checked my script. I forgot about this one. This time of the year is so stacked. We had Lego Star Wars 2 come out at this point. And for some reason, Lego Star Wars 1 was the prequels, and Lego Star Wars 2 was the original trilogy. So we had the best Star Wars movie in the best Lego Star Wars game. Obviously, 3 was probably fucking better because it had everything. But I literally don't even like Star Wars. I think it's dumb. I much prefer Lord of the Rings or like anything fantasy. I don't even like sci-fi. But I fucked with Lego Star Wars, dude. Oh my god. Like we said, Call of Duty 3, the last Call of Duty before Call of Duty became Call of Duty. I think that's pretty cool, and I personally remember playing it. The second World War Call of Duties, obviously before World at War, they were you know what I mean? They were okay. I think like, you know, my brother and my dad played them a lot, but I just think it's cool. I think it's cool to highlight Call of Duty 3 here. Here's an interesting one. Talking about Wii games, do you remember the Rabbids? Rayman and the Raving Rabbids came out around this time. That was actually the first instance of rabbits in video games, Rabbids in video games, which I think is really cool. I didn't realize that their first, you know, the progenitor of their franchise was like a spin-off game, you know, from another big franchise, which I guess is their whole shtick. Now, regarding DS games, there's two things I want to highlight. I personally was under the impression that everybody who had a DS played the first like Nintendo DS Yoshi's Island, which again came out all around Christmas. I know I'm being like, how? What a coincidence! All these great products for us to buy are coming out in November, just before Christmas. But it's just like 2006. There's just so much. You know what I mean? If you don't believe me, what else came out in 2006? Not the Nintendo DS. The Nintendo DS came out a few years ago. You'd think that the Nintendo DS would launch with its next big entry of one of their biggest franchises, Pokemon. But no, it came out in 2006. Diamond and Pearl came out in 2006. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is incredible. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl has such a special place in my heart. It was the first Pokemon I played. I didn't play Emerald. I still think that it's a good generation. I don't think many people will agree with me, but if I'm not mistaken, yeah, no, it was like the first Pokemon to have any sort of online. I know you could trade between Game Boys, but you couldn't trade online and you couldn't battle online. I think Diamond and Pearl was the first to do that, which is crazy because that's such a huge part of Pokemon now. I just think it's worth highlighting because, I don't know, if you're born in the late 90s, early 2000s, this is your fucking era of video games. You know what I mean? You might have been a little bit early for some things, a little bit too late for fucking Pokemon or whatever. This is our era of video games, and this is also the era of video games. This is when video games became fucking video games. Not really, obviously, but it's a really influential time. Let's talk about the console war. Who won? Really? If you look at the sales, the PS3 just edged out the 360 and the Wii smashed them both out of the water. But as far as influence goes, I just feel like I can't put the Wii in the same war as the 360 and the PS3. It was going for a different thing, which I respect. But as far as the 360 and the PS3 goes, I have to give it to the 360 personally. I want to know what other people's takes on this are, but yes, it wasn't a fucking Blu-ray player, and yes, had like slightly weaker hardware maybe, but the exclusives were better at that time, and I just think that, like, Party Chat, I know I'm talking about it as someone who I wasn't there for the heyday of it, but like, think about fucking sitting in the Discord with the boys playing Minecraft or whatever. Like, it's just, that was the progenitor of all of that, and I think that Just based on that alone, it wins. Also, if you are a Sony gamer like me, it's really the only time they've ever beaten us, so, you know. All in all, I hope your takeaway of this video is that, oh my god, Christmas of 2006 was crazy for video games. Thank you, YouTuber, for highlighting that for me. With all that said, I hope you have an epic Christmas, gamers, and if you want to, support me on Patreon. I'm going to have videos coming out hopefully every week. We'll see how well I actually stick to that. It's my New Year's resolution. So check out the Patreon because we're going to have extended cuts called the Patreon cut where I just put in a bunch of jokes and extra footage that I didn't really end up putting in the main video. Hug your loved ones. Be grateful for what you have. Happy holidays. This has been DunnionRings. Peace out. Oh, my fucking arse.